Breaking tonight on ABC News Live Prime, the U.S. has launched a massive retaliatory strike on ISIS targets in Syria. Secretary Hexeth saying the strike was in retaliation for the deadly ambush killing of 2 American soldiers and their civilian U.S. interpreter. What we know about the mission and the American forces involved. And happening now, facing a legally mandated deadline, the Justice Department started releasing thousands of records in the Jeffrey Epstein case, including photos, call logs, many of the files heavily redacted. What those files show and what the Deputy Attorney General, President Trump's former personal attorney, is now signaling about the remaining files yet to be made public. The dramatic end to the days-long manhunt for the Brown University shooter, who authorities say also killed an MIT professor 2 days later. The new details about a possible motive and the major tip that led to a break in both cases. The cross-country storm moving into the east, slowing one of the busiest holiday travel days of the year. Storms bringing heavy rain, winds gusting up to 60 miles per hour, and dramatic water rescues.
And here at LaGuardia Airport, hundreds of flight delays as that storm moves through on what the FAA is calling the busiest day to fly.
Her latest album might read Do Not Disturb, but one Puerto Rican rapper is disrupting the music scene with her modern take on traditional Latin rhythms. Young Miko opens up in the playlist.
I had always wanted to make a project dándole protagonismo a mi signo zodiaco, and being able to make the scorpion like a main character or at least a part of the world.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is Prime with Linsey Davis.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Stephanie Ramos in for Linsey Davis. Thank you for streaming with us. We begin tonight with the U.S. launching a massive military strike against more than 70 ISIS targets in central Syria in retaliation for the deadly ambush on Saturday that killed 2 American soldiers and their civilian American interpreter. U.S. Central Command says American forces are actively executing a large-scale strike against weapons and ISIS infrastructure. A U.S. official telling ABC News the strike involves fighter jets, attack helicopters, artillery, and dozens upon dozens of targets. Sergeant William Howard and Sergeant Edgar Torres Tovar, both of Iowa, and their interpreter were killed this past Saturday by a lone ISIS gunman. They were the first U.S. combat deaths in Syria since 2019 and since the fall of President Bashar al-Assad. President Trump attended their dignified transfer on Wednesday, you see him there, and vowed earlier this week that ISIS would be, quote, hit hard for the ambush. We have Mick Mulroy standing by with more on the impacts across the region. But first, Mary Bruce leads us off from the White House.
Tonight, the video just coming in of the massive U.S. attack on dozens of ISIS targets across central Syria. Retaliation for last Saturday's ISIS ambush that left 3 Americans dead, 2 U.S. service members and their civilian interpreter. U.S. fighter jets and attack helicopters unleashing airstrikes, missiles and artillery hitting ISIS weapons facilities and infrastructure, according to a U.S. official. At least 70 targets hit. President Trump tonight saying the United States is inflicting very serious retaliation, just as I promised, on the murderous terrorists responsible. Adding all terrorists who are evil enough to attack Americans are hereby warned. You will be hit harder than you have ever been hit before if you in any way attack or threaten the USA. Tonight, the Pentagon calling it Operation Hawkeye Strike in honor of those 2 Iowa National Guard soldiers killed in that ISIS ambush, along with 1 U.S. civilian interpreter. Secretary Pete Hegseth announcing the assault on social media, saying this is not the beginning of a war, it is a declaration of vengeance. The retaliatory strikes coming after officials say a lone ISIS gunman killed the 3 Americans and wounded 3 others while they were on patrol in Palmyra, Syria, supporting counterterrorism operations against the Islamic State. They were the first U.S. combat deaths in Syria since 2019. It was just 2 days ago that their remains were flown back home to the U.S., the president there with their families for the dignified transfer at Dover Air Force Base. And tonight, the White House says the president is now delivering on his promise to avenge their deaths.
And Mary Bruce joins us now from the White House. Mary, anything else you can tell us about this attack?
Well, Stephanie, this is a major and ongoing military operation. We are told that many targets have been hit, that the scope of this is significant. The big question remaining tonight, how will ISIS now respond? Stephanie.
Mary Bruce Forsyth at the White House. Mary, thank you.
Thank you.
We're joined now by ABC News contributor and former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for the Middle East, Mick Mulroy. Mick, great to see you. Thanks for being with us tonight. Mick, a U.S. official said the U.S. is targeting multiple locations in central Syria. More pointedly, it's targeting weapons and ISIS infrastructure, as you also heard in Mary's piece. Has there been a resurgence of the terrorist group as of late?
So, Stephanie, right now the U.S. is really focused on what they call the enduring defeat of ISIS campaign. The caliphate obviously was destroyed many years ago, but it's clear that they want to regenerate. They saw an opportunity at the fall of the Assad regime. Right now, the current interim government is cooperating with the United States in this effort, but it's clear that they're not done. And that came from this attack, and likely from that attack, the U.S. really focused on intel to be able to take these retaliatory strikes.
And what do you think, Mick? How big of a threat is ISIS to the region and to the U.S. mainland right now?
Well, ISIS is never going to stop trying to attack the United States and anyone they deem necessary to prosper this Islamic state. And they want to get back to where they actually control terrain and people. At one time, over 1 million people were under their control. I don't see that happening again, but that's one of the reasons why we're seeing these brave men and women in the United States military serve in Syria still to this day. It's to ensure that they don't come back. There is great partners in the SDF and now the government in Damascus, but that pressure needs to stay on, or they will try to regain territory and they will try to attack the West, especially the United States.
And Mick, we know this back and forth has gone on for quite some time. And we also know that during the Assad regime, the U.S. was able to carry out strikes in Syria with little pushback. What will the response be now that Ahmed al-Shara is in charge of Syria?
Well, we have a relationship with al-Shara, the interim president, and President Trump wants to see him succeed. They just recently removed all of the Caesar sanctions. So the sanctions that were put against the Assad regime, obviously that is gone, but it's really going to help the economic situation in Syria now that these sanctions has been removed. And al-Shara has agreed to work with the United States and our SDF partners out in eastern Syria to do counterterrorism operations. And I believe that they were our participants in tonight's operations to retaliate against the killing of our 2 soldiers and an interpreter. So that is a very good sign and something that I imagine is going to continue. But the fight against terrorism, the fight against ISIS is not over. And that's why the United States is in Syria.
And it seems as though, I mean, you mentioned it there, the president is somewhat supportive of this interim leader of Syria. Ahmed al-Shara, though, was at one time designated a terrorist by the U.S. government. Is there concern that groups like ISIS will be allowed to flourish under his rule?
He was in al-Qaeda in Iraq, and he started ISIS in Syria. So he has a history of being in the jihadist movement. He has since separated himself from that. He's saying all the right things. And I think there is a global belief that he could be the one that takes Syria into a new stage of their development into something other than a proxy for Iran, for Russia, as they have been in the past. That, of course, will be seen on how he carries himself out, whether he works with the United States to fight ISIS. But this is not shared by every country in the region. It's clear that Israel believes other. They don't trust al-Shara right now, and they would like to make sure that he doesn't have the military capacity to do anything against them. But the United States and many European countries want to see them succeed. And this, as I said, is an interim government. So if he goes on to allow elections that the Syrian people would actually get to choose their leaders in the future, I think that's really the test for him. But right now, the U.S. and many European countries want to see him succeed because of what he's promised, which is a unified Syria and one that does not allow Russia and Iran nor ISIS to operate within their boundaries.
We will see how all of this develops. Mick Mulroy, thanks so much for your insights. Late today, the Justice Department released hundreds of thousands of documents in the Jeffrey Epstein case, including photos and call logs. This in response to a law requiring the DOJ to release the full files by the end of today. But not all the files will be released right now. Here's Chief Justice Correspondent Pierre Thomas.
Tonight, after months of delays, the Justice Department has begun releasing hundreds of thousands of documents from its investigation into sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. It came after Congress forced their hand, passing a law requiring DOJ to release the full FBI files by the end of the day. But that won't happen. What's being released now, sources tell us, is less than half of the files. In this initial release, never-before-seen records from the investigation and thousands of photographs, some graphic and heavily redacted. But without context about what any of this means. The big question: will the files reveal a list of powerful men who took part in Epstein's sexual abuse of teenage girls? The FBI insisted there was no list, that there was no evidence that could lead them to charge anyone else with crimes. President Trump had a long friendship with Epstein, White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles describing them as sort of young single playboys together. Trump says he and Epstein eventually had a falling out.
I have nothing to do with Jeffrey Epstein. I threw him out of my club many years ago because I thought he was a sick pervert.
The White House Chief of Staff says Trump's name comes up in the files, but not doing anything awful. I sat down with Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche, who was also the president's criminal defense attorney.
Will you make the commitment to the American people today that all the files that should be released will be released?
Well, yes, but I mean, that was a question that, with a lot of built-in assumptions. When you say should be released, we're complying with the law. And the law, the Transparency Act that was passed, is consistent with what President Trump has been asking us to do and telling the American people he expected to be done since before he was elected president, which is release whatever files we can.
You mentioned President Trump, so let me get specifically to President Trump. Will every document that mentions President Trump, every picture of him, every video, every bit of information related to him in these files be released today or at some point in this process?
Assuming it's consistent with the law, yes. So there's no effort to hold anything back because there's the name Donald J. Trump.
To be clear, you're saying DOJ has not been ordered to redact anything related to President Trump, that there's no order to do such?
No, I mean, I would give the order. President Trump has certainly said from the beginning that he expects all files that can be released to be released, and that's exactly what we're doing.
Trump has tried to turn the focus to Epstein's relationships with Democrats like former President Clinton. Today's release includes some never-before-seen images of Clinton and Epstein together. This picture of Clinton in a jacuzzi, and this one of him swimming with Epstein's accomplice, convicted sex trafficker Ghislaine Maxwell. But Clinton has not been accused of wrongdoing. In fact, the White House Chief of Staff told Vanity Fair there's no incriminating information about Clinton in the files, saying Trump was wrong about that.
And Pierre Thomas joins us now. Pierre, what comes next?
Well, we should note, Stephanie, that DOJ is deciding what to release and when to release it. What we're seeing tonight is just part of the Epstein files, with additional batches of documents expected to be released in the coming days and weeks, Stephanie.
All right, Pierre, thank you so much for that update.
Pleasure.
And we just received a statement from President Clinton's spokesperson. It said in part the White House hasn't been hiding these files for months, only to dump them late on a Friday to protect Bill Clinton. This is about shielding themselves from what comes next or from what they'll try and hide forever. I want to bring in Washington managing editor Catherine Faulders, who has been poring over these documents. Catherine, thank you for joining us on Prime. This initial release includes previously never before seen records from the investigations into Epstein, but there are still more files that haven't been released, despite the deadline being today. What are you hearing is the justification for waiting to release these other files?
Well, that's right. And I think that is the important point here, Stephanie, and worth pointing out that while we are poring over hundreds of thousands of pages of documents that the Justice Department has begun producing, that this is only potentially a little less than half of the documents that DOJ has in their possession. Now, we know the Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche has said earlier today that they would try and produce as many documents as they could, but that they're still going through them. They still have to redact, and that they intend to release more documents over the course of the next couple of weeks. But of course, there are questions about what they chose to release now, what they intend to release in the future. And remember what the Epstein Transparency Act actually says. It has a number of exceptions that the Justice Department could potentially use to not release documents in the future. They do intend to release more documents, but for example, if there's an active investigation, if DOJ is redacting, of course, victims' names. Now, DOJ would then have to say, according to the act, that these are the reasons why we're not releasing file X, Y, or Z, but they could still use that as an exception to not release further documents. Now, I will say that the White House and White House aides are capitalizing so far on the photos that they are releasing of Bill Clinton. We know that there are little references so far to President Trump, and that is obviously, according to this release, that is coming from the administration.
And Catherine, as you know, President Trump's name appears minimally in these files. The president today declined to take reporters' questions on the new release. So far, is there anything new in the files that could cause concern for the president?
No, well, not so far that we have seen. We haven't seen anything that could point to any additional liability by the president. Obviously, that photo that you're showing there, I just want to make clear that is something that came from the Oversight Committee Democrats on Capitol Hill. And Trump has, of course, denied all wrongdoing associated with this. So has Bill Clinton. He's also denied all wrongdoing associated with his dealings with Jeffrey Epstein. I think it is worth noting, though, that while we're not seeing Trump's name a lot in these files that have been released by the Trump administration, we know that his name appears in the files. In fact, his own chief of staff, Susie Wiles, told Vanity Fair in an interview that came out earlier this week that while there's no incriminating information about in the files, that there's no incriminating information, that there is information about Trump, that Trump's name is in the files, and that while there's no incriminating information about Clinton, that Trump was wrong when he previously implied that there was incriminating information about Clinton. So still a lot to pour over here.
Still a lot to pour over. We know both Republicans and Democrats had been calling for the release of these files. A good number published now. All right, Catherine, thank you so much. Thanks for joining us. Joining us now is Republican Tennessee Congressman Tim Burchett. Thank you so much, Congressman, for your time tonight. Really appreciate it. So the Department of Justice has begun releasing partial batches, saying more would be released in the coming weeks. That timeline does not comply with legislation Congress passed and that the president signed. What's your reaction to all of this?
Well, thank you for having me on, ma'am. Part of the problem is what my concerns are as our President Trump's is that there are some innocent people that are in this. I was in a closed-door meeting with some of the ladies who were victims, and they were girls at the time, and they didn't have sex with older men. They were raped. So let's just make that clear up front. They were raped. But this one lady said, you know, I had this horrible experience, and I want to see the files because I have blocked it out of my mind. God gives people that defense mechanism, and I said, so you want the files released? She said, because I wanted to know what happened to me. And she said, no, I don't want the files. Her attorney even said, we don't want the files released because it would put her out. And then, of course, she would turn around every day. Christmas Day, she'd hear a knock on the door, and there'd be a bunch of reporters, microphone in her face. So that's kind of the concern. That's what the delay is right now. From what I understand from my sources in Washington, that they've released large amounts of these files, and they're going to continue to. Are they complying by the law? Probably not, but I believe they will. And I don't think this is an intentional delay. I think the volume of files is just a little more than a lot of people really realize was out there.
Thousands and thousands of files. Have you or your staff had a chance to look over any of these files?
The previous ones, but not the current ones, the ones that are coming out. I'll get those as soon as they come out, and I'll see them just when everybody else does. I've been through this, ma'am. I'm probably one of the few legislators that has actually held the hand of a woman who's been abused as a child. I passed some of the toughest laws in the country when I was in the state legislature. Unfortunately, some of them were ruled unconstitutional because they were so strong. But the truth is that I want to get to these dirtbags, and I want to send them to hell as fast as possible. And I don't mean that in any kind of joking sort of way. short piece of rope and a tall tree. I have no stomach for anybody that would mess with a child.
And clearly these documents, these files, these photos are being looked over. As you said, there are thousands and thousands of them. What do you think should be happening right now? Democrats have said they'll examine all legal options. You know, there's a team that's looking through all of these. A lot of the information is being redacted. What do you think should happen now?
I think they should be released as much as we can without disgracing or embarrassing some who was a young girl at the time and is now as an adult. I think that's all. And then the rest, just let it drop, because I don't care who you embarrass. I really don't. I don't care if it's the King of England or the custodian down at the Sizzler. I bust them all.
Right, I can only imagine how difficult it is for those victims, for those women, those survivors that have to kind of relive this story all over again. Before you go, we do want to touch on something that we just learned about just a short time ago. Secretary Hegseth announced a strike in Syria to eliminate ISIS fighters. And this, of course, comes after the death of 2 American service members who were killed by the group last week. You sit on the House Foreign Affairs Committee. You are also probably just hearing about this along with us. What's your reaction to these strikes?
Well, if I wasn't, I couldn't tell you that I wasn't. But let's just say that this is the first I've heard of this. I'm glad President Trump was not one to mess with. You know, for too long, I feel like in the last few years, we've written strong letters. We've gone to the United Nations. We've gone to NATO. We have the strongest, most powerful military in the world, ma'am. The best operators in the world. Some very incredible people that we call on to do some very awful things. And I think retribution is due. You take an American life, you suffer. And that's exactly what President Trump is doing, and I fully support this. Syria has been a bad actor in the past, and they know if they mess with us, they're going to suffer the consequences. And I want you to know, this is an old Southern saying, there's a new sheriff in town, and his name is Donald J. Trump.
Congressman Burchett, thank you so much for your time tonight. Really appreciate it as we head into a holiday week. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Merry Christmas or Happy Hanukkah. Thank you, ma'am.
Next tonight to the powerful cross-country storm now sweeping its way across the Northeast, all on the busiest day of the season for air travel ahead of the holidays. We'll have the forecast in just a moment, but first, Whit Johnson reports.
Tonight, powerful storms coast to coast, bringing treacherous conditions to millions as the holiday travel rush kicks off. In Philadelphia, up to 1.5 inches of rain quickly flooding roadways. The Schuylkill Expressway turning into a river, crews racing to clear storm drains. Outside Boston, trees down and wires sparking in Wrentham. On New York's Long Island, multiple vehicles engulfed in flames sparked by a fallen power line. The same system brought an all-out blizzard to parts of the Midwest. Blowing snow and ice forcing a ground stop at the Minneapolis-St. Paul airport for hours. Crews working to de-ice planes on the frozen tarmac. In Boulder County, Colorado, deputies urging people to stay home. The National Weather Service warning of wind gusts up to 100 miles an hour. And storms continue to plague the Pacific Northwest. Outside Portland, multiple people trapped in this pickup were pulled to safety by swift water teams this morning.
Our thanks to Whit Johnson. And let's get right to meteorologist Brittany Bell from our partner station WABC. She is tracking it all for us tonight. Hey there, Brittany.
Hey, Stephanie. So strong damaging winds continue all around the Northeast, still gusting up to 40 to 50 miles per hour all evening long. So additional tree damage is possible as well as power outages. So these winds are pushing in freezing temperatures. Overnight lows will drop down into the teens, 20s and the 30s, mainly below freezing. So black ice could be a travel concern if you're traveling out and about along the I-95 corridor across upstate and western New York on Saturday morning. Now let's focus on that system out west. This next one is also still windy, but these winds are also enhancing fire danger when you combine that with dry air. So there's a red flag warning out for spots of Colorado, more the same for Nebraska. On top of that, high wind warnings continue and a flood watch out for the Pacific Northwest, also including north and central sections of California. Rainfall totals throughout this weekend could range between 2 to 4 inches on the lower end, with some heavier totals approaching 4 to 6 inches are possible, up to a half a foot of rain. And keep in mind, this is on an already saturated ground and swollen rivers, and these rivers will continue to rise and crest lasting throughout the weekend. Some isolated heavier rainfall totals also possible. Stephanie?
And we saw so much rain here in New York City today. Incredible. All right, Brittany, thank you. New details tonight about the discovery of the Brown University shooting suspect, who officials say also killed an MIT professor days later. Law enforcement found the suspect's body inside a New Hampshire storage facility. And we learned more about him today and the tip that helped authorities locate him. Chief investigative correspondent Aaron Katursky has the latest.
Tonight, a clearer picture of the terror stalking New England and the violence authorities feared could have come had the suspect who opened fire at Brown University and then murdered an MIT professor of nuclear science not died by suicide.
He could have absolutely had plans to inflict more harm.
Authorities said Claudio Neves Valente of Portugal shot himself in a storage unit in New Hampshire on Tuesday and was found late Thursday night. The dramatic end to a multi-state, days-long manhunt followed a tip first posted online about a suspicious car lurking near Brown.
He blew this case right open.
The tip said, "I'm being dead serious. The police need to look into a gray Nissan with Florida plates, possibly a rental." That was the car he was driving. The tipster coming forward telling investigators he saw the shooter in a campus bathroom before the rampage and thought he seemed suspicious. Today, the FBI releasing this video showing the tipster confronting the suspect. "Your car is back there. Why are you circling the block?" The suspect responding, "I don't know you from nobody," and "Why are you harassing me?" before running away. Investigators said that information led to this blue-gray Nissan Sentra. Authorities said Neves Valente rented that car in Boston December 1st. Cameras spotting the same vehicle near Brown over the next 2 weeks. Investigators then tracked that car to Brookline, Massachusetts, where MIT professor Nuno Lalero was shot and killed in cold blood. Investigators said they recovered 2 9mm Glock firearms, ammunition, body armor, and several thumb drives.
And Aaron Katursky joins us now. Aaron, do we know anything more about the suspect's motives?
No, authorities say they do not know the reason that the shooter decided to carry out the attacks either at Brown University or right here at the professor's home in Brookline, Massachusetts. They know the two men knew each other from their college days in Portugal, and the shooter studied for a time at Brown. They're hoping that the thumb drives they said they recovered from the storage unit and from the suspect's car up in New Hampshire will contain some clues about a possible motive or about any other possible plans he may have had before his body was found in that storage facility. Steph?
That investigation, of course, ongoing. Aaron, thank you so much for that update. In his annual hours-long press conference today, a defiant Vladimir Putin insisted Russia is ready and willing to end the war in Ukraine, but only on terms he previously set, which includes keeping control of occupied regions. Putin also taking a moment to praise President Trump. Authorities allowed our chief foreign correspondent Ian Pannell into Moscow. Here's Ian speaking to Russia's deputy foreign minister and everyday citizens.
Tonight, Vladimir Putin defiant, addressing hundreds of journalists and millions of Russians at his annual press conference, insisting his war goals will be achieved. Saying the ball is with Ukraine and its European sponsors in peace talks, insisting Russia's ready to negotiate and end the conflict. While praising President Trump's efforts as serious and sincere, he warned Russian troops are advancing across all front lines. And while he was speaking, news came through of an audacious Ukrainian attack on a Russian oil tanker in the Mediterranean, more than 1,000 miles away, the vessel part of Russia's sanctions-busting shadow fleet. Despite all the talk of peace, Vladimir Putin vowing to retaliate.
How confident are you that we are on the precipice of an end to this war?
Very much confident and pretty sure that we are on the verge of resolving this terrible crisis. Now, we do not believe this is a war.
But when you have the best part of 10 million people forced from their homes and you have tens of thousands of civilians killed, hundreds of thousands of soldiers on both sides being killed, it would seem to be a war by most people's understanding.
It sounds cynical, but my point here is we do what we do. We want to stop it.
Here in the shadow of St. Basil's Cathedral and the Kremlin lies one of very few memorials in Russia to those who've been killed during the war. There's almost a collective denial about what's happened here. What is this war about? You talked about civilians dying in Donbass that you knew. But Ukrainian civilians are dying every single night.
Там гражданские не погибают.
You don't think it's happening?
Гражданских не бомбят.
Our thanks to Ian Panel reporting from Moscow. Now to the federal investigation into the fiery plane crash that killed NASCAR legend Greg Biffle and his family. His wife sending a final text just moments before the crash. Here's Victor Okendo.
Tonight, harrowing new details about the moments leading up to that horrific plane crash in North Carolina that killed 7, including NASCAR star Greg Biffle, his wife Christina, and 2 children. Christina's mother confirming to ABC News the group was flying out for a birthday trip and that her daughter sent her a final text in the minutes before the crash telling People magazine the message read, "We're in trouble."
Aircraft emergency. Aircraft is down. Unknown subjects. Runway 28.
Moments later, the Cessna aircraft crashing short of the runway at Statesville Regional Airport. Officials say it was in the air for only 10 minutes and that the pilot was attempting to return to the airport amid rain and reduced visibility. The NTSB now processing the crash site as part of their investigation.
We look at the people operating the aircraft, we look at the aircraft itself, and then we look at the environment, and the weather is one of those we look at and will look at very closely.
Such a tragic story. Our thanks to Victor Okendo. Police say 3 people are dead and 9 injured after a stabbing spree in Taiwan's capital of Taipei. Taipei authorities say a 27-year-old threw smoke grenades in the direction of the city's main metro station before randomly attacking others with a sharp object. He then jumped off a building to his death. Records show the man was wanted by police for violating military service laws. Coming up here on Prime, federal officials ordered a pause on an immigration visa program that the Brown University shooting suspect used to enter the U.S. We'll look at that program by the numbers. Plus, TikTok announces a new deal bringing them one step closer to American ownership. We'll tell you what's in the agreement. And officials in Rome say that getting close to the city's famous Trevi fountain will soon come with a cost. We'll be right back. Welcome back. In the days after the Brown University shooting, we've learned that suspect was a Portuguese national who entered the U.S. through the Diversity Lottery Immigrant Visa Program, also known as DV1. Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem said she ordered that program to immediately be paused at President Trump's direction in order to, quote, ensure no more Americans are harmed by the program. Let's look at the DV1 program by the numbers. 1990, that's when Congress created this program for people in countries with low rates of immigration to the U.S. According to Noem, President Trump had tried as far back as 2017 to end the program after a truck ramming attack here in New York City that same year. Every year, the program offers up to around 50,000 immigrant visas, and visas are apportioned across 6 geographic regions. More than 20 million qualified entries were received for the 2026 program, out of which more than 129,000 applicants and their family members were registered and could apply for a visa. The selectees of this lottery are chosen randomly, but they still go through a lengthy application process. Primary applicants also need a high school degree or equivalent or 2 years of work experience within the past 5 years in a job that requires at least 2 years of training or experience. Coming up here on Prime, authorities arrest a woman who is now being called a real-life Grinch. We'll tell you why. And Sony acquires the beloved Peanuts brand for much more than peanuts. We'll tell you how much the deal was for. That's coming up. Welcome back to Prime. Here's a look at the stories making headlines right now. The Department of Justice released thousands of records from their investigation into Jeffrey Epstein. The files released today also contain what appeared to be the first known report to federal law enforcement about Epstein's involvement in child sexual exploitation. That complaint was from 1996, more than 8 years before the first investigation into Epstein was launched. U.S. forces are executing large-scale strikes against ISIS and targeting multiple locations in central Syria tonight. The strikes are in retaliation for the deaths of 3 Americans in Syria who were killed by an ISIS gunman this past Saturday. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth announced the strikes in a statement on social media. There are new details about the suspect who investigators believe shot and killed 2 people at Brown University and then 2 days later murdered an MIT professor. Police found the suspect dead in a New Hampshire storage unit with 200 rounds of ammunition and multiple firearms that matched the shell casings recovered from both shootings. School officials said the suspect was a former graduate student who attended the university more than 25 years ago. Law enforcement say they have not determined a motive for the shootings. And the Anaheim Angels have settled a lawsuit with the family of deceased pitcher Tyler Skaggs. The family sued the Angels after Skaggs died in 2019 when an Angels employee gave him a fentanyl-laced pill. That employee is currently serving a 22-year prison sentence for his role in the pitcher's death. The amount and terms of the settlement with the team were not immediately disclosed. Coming up here on Prime, why one airline is pulling back on its frequent flyer perks just before the start of what could be the busiest holiday travel season on record. And a major change is coming to a popular Roman tourist attraction that's expected to generate millions of dollars. The Peanuts sold a gingerbread world record and a holiday Grinch. These stories and more in tonight's rundown. TikTok is one step closer to coming under American ownership. The social media giant has announced a finalized deal to have new investors take control of about 45% of the company. Among them, cloud computing service Oracle, tech-focused investment firm Silver Lake, and MGX, an artificial intelligence fund backed by the government of the United Arab Emirates. TikTok's Chinese parent company ByteDance will retain nearly 20% of the new entity, but the agreement does require the investor group to oversee content moderation and the TikTok algorithm. Oracle will serve as the so-called trusted security partner responsible for safeguarding the data of TikTok users. The final sign-off targeted for January 22nd. It's the great business deal. Charlie Brown, beloved comic strip Peanuts, has a new owner. Sony is buying a 41% stake in the Charles M. Schulz comic from Canada's Wildbrain for $457 million, giving Sony an 80% majority ownership. The Schulz family will keep a 20% share. Peanuts made its debut in 1950 to 7 newspapers. Now it's a juggernaut, reaching millions. A big change comes to the largest airline group, American Airlines. Members of the airline carrier's loyalty program are no longer able to earn miles and status when purchasing a basic economy ticket. Customers will now have to spend more money for a regular economy ticket in order to earn miles. The change to American Airlines follows a similar policy Delta enacted to its cheapest seats. Tossing a coin into the Trevi Fountain will now cost more than just that coin you throw in. Starting February, tourists flocking to Italy's capital of Rome will need to pay a €2 entrance fee to see the fountain up close. The coins tossed into the fountain for good luck are donated to charity, and funds from the new entrance fee will be used by the city to pay for upkeep. A woman is being called a real-life Grinch for allegedly stealing a toy donation box. Authorities say that's 64-year-old Cecilia Milano in a Santa hat dragging the box out of a bar just outside Palm Beach, Florida. Witnesses told police when they confronted Milano, she claimed she was helping deliver the toys. Deputies arrested Milano on Thursday and said her story was all made up. She's now charged with theft. And check this out, a taste of suburban Chicago, literally in the heart of Hollywood. Chicago, of course, known for huge gingerbread displays. The red brick mansion, known as the Home Alone house, is one of the most iconic of Christmas movie houses. Now, on the corner of Hollywood and Vine, our parent company Disney has built a life-sized version out of gingerbread, breaking the Guinness World Record for the world's largest gingerbread house, made from 4,400 gingerbread brick tiles, 800 roof tiles, and held together with 20 gallons of edible glue. The house is open to the public tonight. Coming up, we hear the sounds of young Miko, the young budding star grappling with her rising fame.
Mommy, lo que Bold, magnetic, with an unmistakable flow. This is Young Miko. Born in Añasco, Puerto Rico, she is a rising star in the Latin urban music scene, openly queer and proudly grounded in her Boricua roots. Now Young Miko is stepping into her newest chapter in full Scorpio mystique, balancing fame with privacy and fun with vulnerability in her sophomore album, Do Not Disturb, with instant hits like Traviesa, What's Up, and Likey Likey. Miko is letting listeners into her world with the honesty fans crave.
Young Miko, baby Miko, it's good to meet you. Congratulations on everything.
Thank you so much.
This is so exciting for you. I mean, Do Not Disturb, it's your sophomore album. What's going through your mind as you release it?
I'm so excited. You know, sometimes when you work so much at something, you kind of forget it's going to eventually come out. And I think I'm in that moment of processing that the world is finally going to hear it.
What's Up, Naomi, Likey Likey. Yeah. What is it about those tracks that you find so special?
I think they were good tracks to give you a glimpse as to what directions the album was going to be taking. I thought What's Up was a great first single.
It's good.
Thank you. I do like the fact that the first bar says, baby que la que hay, and it was kind of my way of saying what's up to the world as well. It had been a year since I had dropped something, so I thought it would be sort of clever to have that be the first track. And then Naomi felt like a good follow-up track too, because it gives you a completely different genre and vibe to maybe what people are used to hearing of me. And then Likey Likey, I thought was a great vibe to like pump you up again that the album is coming out, and just to let you know that there's gonna be a little bit of everything in there.
Do Not Disturb is seductive and unafraid of the shadow work that fuels Young Miko's art.
I had always wanted to make a project dándole protagonismo a mi signo zodiaco, you know, and being able to make the Scorpion like a main character or at least a part of the world. And I finally felt it was time to use it, and Do Not Disturb is for like the perfect project for a Scorpio.
A breakthrough in the industry, Young Miko's 2022 debut, ATT, or ATT, climbed into the top 10 on multiple Latin charts, earned her first entry on the all-genre Billboard 200, and scored her a Grammy nomination for Best Música Urbana Album.
ATT, and that's Spanish for atentamente, or sincerely. You've talked about how that album was a love letter to your fans. And so I wonder, what was the opening letter to this album?
That's a good question. It was mostly to me. Around ATT, I felt like I really did open up a lot. And I really let people, like, quite literally, like, into my diary. This time around, it felt a little bit of the opposite. I quite literally used the Do Not Disturb sign, both literal and, like, symbolic.
Is it hard to sort of keep something for yourself now? As
Yes.
you get more and more famous?
Definitely. And there are things that I do feel that I deserve to let myself keep to myself, because my life already sort of feels like maybe it belongs to the world.
In 2023, Miko's release of Lisa skyrocketed her to international fame. Her fans, cheekily known as Miko-sexuals, quickly turned into a viral sensation. Fast forward to 2025, Young Miko took the stage as an opener for Billie Eilish on her massive Hit Me Hard and Soft tour.
You have this beautiful friendship with Billie Eilish, opening on her tour and all of that. Tell me about that friendship.
She's the sweetest. She's so talented. I had the most amazing time on tour. It was bittersweet at the end because I love touring. I watched every show of hers every night that I could, and I look up to her a lot.
You are Latina, you're queer, you're Puerto Rican, like all of these things that are awesome, but at the same time, sometimes scary in some parts of the country, in some parts of the world. Do you ever think about that?
I do, every day. And like you said, it can be scary because I care. Most of the times I do feel like I have a responsibility and a very big purpose in life. And I just hope to be able to achieve that to my best extent and to feel that I truly put my heart in my community, mi cultura, where I come from, what I represent.
And on an album stacked with solo hits, her only feature, Traviesa, with Eladio Carrión, made her keep up y darle con todo.
Who has challenged you the most to be a better artist?
I think Eladio was a really fun collaboration that is actually the only collaboration in the album. And I do have this moment where I go back and forth with him in our song, and it was such a fun challenge to keep up with him. He's so fast when he writes, and he's so unique, he's so clever with his words. And so, yeah, Ela was definitely such a fun guy to be in the studio with, and definitely made me have to like speed up, and you know what I mean? So it was fun, yeah.
And with one record-breaking moment after another, it's no surprise that young Miko made history this year, becoming the first woman to sell out El Coliseo de Puerto Rico, better known as El Choli, in just 90 minutes.
The fans give you energy, don't they?
So much energy. They know that.
What do you want to tell them as you get ready to embark on this new chapter, this next chapter? What do you
I
want to
love
say
them
to
so
your fans?
much. I'm so thankful that they're still here with me. I hope they're with me forever until my hair turns gray. And everything I do is thinking about them, for myself as well. And I'm just so excited for them. I know they're going to love the album. And yes, I love them so much.
Cuando se suelta me manifiesto, ey. Lo que me hizo fue un amarre, nos pasamos chingando todo el día.
She's got a long runway ahead of her. Our thanks to Gio Benitez for that conversation. If you want to learn more about your favorite artists, coming up at 8 p.m., spend some time with Afrobeat star Davido, country queen Dasha, and soulful songbird Teddy Swims in our full episode of The Playlist. And that is our show for this hour. I'm Stephanie Ramos. Stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. Thanks so much for streaming with us.